Hey everybody! Today we're going to take a look at a session that consists purely of samples, and the complete project is available as a free download for Ableton Live 12. So make sure you grab that, and we're going to take a look at every track within the project, and I'm going to explain what I did here. You already heard the complete track in the intro, and even the synth is a sample in this case, so there's nothing involved in terms of instruments. No operator, no analog, no nothing, just pure samples. And the pack I've used, by the way, is the SINEE Total Techno pack, which was created by people like Andre Walter from Stigmata, Bjorn Torben, and other artists. And there's something crazy like 1800 samples in it. It's one of our most popular packs on the website, so make sure to check it out. Link is in the description below. It also includes stuff from drum machines like an analog rhythm, for example, and all the sounds were recorded through really nice hardware. And I want to make a point of using only one-shot samples in this project, so you can see what's possible without even using loops, even if there are loops in the pack. But the only loops I've used are some top loops at the very end, so some hi-hats, and that's pretty much it. The rest is all one-shots. So let's dive into the project and start with the first track, which is our kick drum, of course. And I'm gonna play you the original sample, and then I'm gonna engage whatever effect I have on that channel so you can see what I did. So this is one of the kick drum samples, and the rumble is already baked in. I just took out some frequencies in the midsection because I wanted it to sound a little bit more subtle. Now it sounds like this. A little bit more muffled, so naturally I had to bring a transient back in, and this is on that track here, which is another kick drum, and I just used the internal filter on the simpler device around 5K. Let's first listen to the kick drum without anything, even with the filter disengaged. Then I had just this tick left, a little bit of saturator on top, and pedal on 36%, so not that much, but you can hear it gives a little bit of grit. Now let's hear how they sound together. Well, that's nice already, but I need a little bit more of glue, so I added another saturator on the whole group. So I grouped the bass drum and the transient. And this auto filter right here is just for performance reasons. So if you want to perform the pack, I mapped this on my keyboard to F for filter, so I always know where to reach it. On, off, and then you can make your DJ style cuts. Whole group sounds like this. And that's already a very solid starting point. Next up we have some percussions. And my pattern looks like this. Very, very simple indeed. Let's have a listen. And you can already hear in the background there's something more going on because, of course, we have some return effects. So the first one is a echo, and there's an LFO on it that modulates the frequency of the filter. You can see that here. It's mapped to low pass frequency. And in Ableton Live 12, you have this option. You can switch from remote to modulation. I left it on remote on purpose so you can see what it's doing, because I like the visual feedback you're getting with this. Just to create a little bit of movement on top. And then we have this hybrid reverb on channel B. And I just EQ'd a little bit. Well, not a little bit really, quite a lot. So I took out some of the mids, the high mids, and of course all the bottom end, and added a slight tiny touch of highs. And this one is interesting because I used one of the texture impulse responses here called chains. We're gonna have a listen to this later in the project. And then on channel C, I only have a preset for my drums, which is just to give them a little bit of air here on the open hi-hat, clap, etc., etc. Let's go back to the perk. So this was our initial sound. And that was way too much sustain for me because I just wanted to add a little bit of groove. And I switched to classic mode, took a little bit of quite a lot of sustain out and also gave a little bit of attack. Didn't do really much in this section here. And then I just filtered it down. Next up we have our right cymbal, which sounds like this. And if I go into classic mode, this is what the original sample sounds like. So I added quite a lot of fade in one-shot mode, and that's because I didn't want the ride to sound like every other ride you put on top of your track. I just wanted it to act more like kind of a background texture, something weird and off-kilter going on in the background that's not really on rhythm. So if we listen to this in context with the kick drum, you can hear it moves away from the kick drum a little bit and then comes back in. And on this one, I also engaged the internal filter, as you can see here, around 7K, because I didn't want the harsh high end. Sidechain compressor after this, and then I narrowed it down even more, so you can see I made it cut at around 1K, a little bit above 1K, and then it sounds like this. Next up, we have our open hi-hat, and I literally did nothing to this sample except maybe pitch it down. Not even that, no. So this sample is used, as it were, from the library. The only extra thing you can hear really is the return channel C. If I put that down, this is my dry sample. Let's pull it back up. Then we have a clap channel. And again, I'm not using this like a clap in a traditional sense. This is more of a energy adding device for me. And I felt the need to add another EQ to take all of the low end out. And then it sounds like this. Again, a little bit of return C. And then we get to our main element, which is our synth. For this, I also used a one shot. Sounds like this. And the sequence you're hearing originally came from the ML185 sequencer, but because Max for Live devices are quite buggy, it doesn't remember your settings when you recall the track. So I recorded the output of the 185 sequencer to a fresh MIDI track, and then I dragged that MIDI file into my track again. So we ended up with this. This is my sequence from the 185, and now I can recall my project and have the sequence going. So I felt like this was sounding nice already, but it was a little bit too bread and butter for me. So I added a chord device and pitched it down -6 semitones. Just to give it that 3 AM in the morning techno-y vibe. And then I added a Corpus, transposed it +9 semitones. Dry white is at 43%, so it's just mixed in. And I'm on the tube algorithm. And the cool thing about this is I used the MIDI from function from Corpus, which is often overlooked. If I turn this off for a second, let's have a listen. That's pretty cool already, but now I'm gonna turn the MIDI from on again, and this is following our MIDI pattern here. And you can already hear how much more complex that gets. Again, off. I like that way more. And you can make this MIDI from section follow pretty much anything in your project. So it's going to be related to whatever you're doing in your project. And in this case, I just took the simple way and made it follow my sequence. Then I have a grain delay. Grain delay and amp is a great combination. I can highly recommend you fool around with this. And it took me like 2 or 3 minutes to get the right settings. Pretty dry explanation will be I pitched it down 7 semitones, add a little bit of spray and a little bit of random pitch and feedback as well. So yeah, grain delay is one of these things. I would highly encourage you to play around with this and to come up with something that suits you. And chances are you're gonna come up with 5 or 12 sequences that you like, and then you can resample them and use them in future projects. So after that, I added an auto filter because our synth is not running the whole time like this. I wanted to start like this, so we can use it later in the track to do our arrangement and have a build-up, followed by the usual sidechain compression. And I felt also this needed a little bit of EQ. And that's our synth part pretty much done. So the cool part about this is you can just save all this as a rack and then just change out the sample, and you can come up with some pretty cool ideas, I think. Next in line, we needed some atmospheric sounds and some textures, so I added this drone sound. And completely changed its character with the shifter device. So one of the cool things about the shifter is this white button here. Let me turn it off for a second. Let's have a listen. And you can hear what that does to the sound in a stereo field. It really changes it a lot. And this is again one of these devices where you have to be willing to experiment a little bit until you come up with something you like. Then we have an auto filter. I just want to take out a little bit of the top end, and then a sidechain compressor, of course. Next up, we have some closed heads. This is one of 2 loops I used, and the original sounds like this, which is cool, but it sounded a little bit too staticky and a little too machine-like for the sound I was after. So I added the Ableton vocoder. Vocoder is great for everything, hi-hats, cymbals, rides, whatever you name it. Dry wet is on 100%, so the whole signal is running through it. And then I added an LFO, and you can see it's mapped to the depth right here, because I wanted the hi-hat loop on top to evolve a little bit as well, just to make it more interesting. So you can see we have the perception of the decay of the top loop changing, even if that's not the case, because we are just changing the frequency spectrum. But we can also, on top of that, change the release time. If we wanted to. This is just for arrangement reasons. And then, of course, the obligatory compressor with sidechains signal to our kick drum. And then we have this open hat, which is running through the return A. Another example of a sample I didn't really have to do much anything to, because it was processed really nicely. So I just pitched it down 1 semitone and 23 cents and engaged the filter to take a little bit of the high end out. And the last of our elements here is another top loop, which again contained way too much low frequencies for me. I just needed the mid to high mid frequencies. So I put an EQ on it, and let's see what we have here. We started at 303 Hertz, always a nice number. And then I decided to make a dip at roughly 5K, because there was a frequency I didn't like. Let's have a listen before and after. You see it's a lot less harsh now. A little bit of saturator is always a go-to for me on every hi-hat sound. And then to add extra movement, a phaser flanger. There's one more thing I want to show you though. On the master, I have one of our SINEE racks, and this is just a bunch of utilities, EQs, compressors, even OTTs in here, but it's on very, very moderate settings, like 5%. Just gives everything that edge and shining sparkle on top that you want. This is of course also included in this session when you download it, so you can have a look at the settings. So let's have a listen to the whole thing again. That's it for today. So I guess the little takeaways for today are how important it is to really dive a little bit deeper into Ableton's devices and to discover stuff like the MIDI from section in Corpus, because these tiny differences, they add up over time. And if you use Corpus in conjunction with stuff like a grain delay and amp, you can come up with some really, really wild stuff. And the other takeaway for me personally will be that working with samples is just such a clean way of working, especially if you use the function collect all and save. So you can open your projects like 6 months later and you can be sure everything is there, which is very convenient and good for peace of mind. So as mentioned, everything you heard today was from our Total Techno pack. You can get it on sine.de. And make sure to check out also the description below, because this project is available as a free download. So if you have Ableton Live 12, you can grab it right now. As always, hope you found this useful. Gonna see you soon. Take care.